World leaders have condemned Russia's latest offensive in Ukraine's east. The Kremlin is seeking to make up for recent military losses around the capital, Kyiv, by seizing control of the country's industrial heartland. Areas marked in blue are already under Russian control. A new front line, shown in red, stretches along nearly 500 kilometres. Moscow says securing the Donbas region is now the main goal of its so-called special military operation. Our next report contains images that you might find distressing.
More Ukrainian civilians killed by Russian shelling. In a residential apartment block in Kharkiv, a man recognizes his neighbor. He worked in security nearby. Every day he went to get food. Every day. The shelling began and we fled. When we came back, the old man was already dead. Closer to the front lines, in Kramatorsk, more victims of Russian bombardment. The increased shelling has not only added to the numbers of dead, it has also forced Ukraine to suspend evacuation efforts for the living. To the south, only one part of Mariupol still remains in Ukrainian hands: the Azovstal metalworks. The Azov battalion, who are holding out against Russian forces, say they're protecting civilians, hiding from the bombs in a bunker below the metalworks. Their accounts of life under siege.
My youngest child cries at everything. He twitches in his sleep. He and the eldest are starting to get depressed. They miss their peaceful life. It's been really frightening lately. Frightening even to go out to use the toilet. To those who are responsible for this war, who unleashed this war against us, I wish they would have to go through all this pain themselves, and their children too.
Russian state media claim that 120 civilians from the Azovstal plant left on Tuesday via humanitarian corridors. But Mariupol's city council said more than 1,000 were taking refuge here. An advisor to Ukraine's president says Russia has begun firing bunker-busting munitions at the shelter, which may still be harboring children.
Well, a commander of Ukrainian Marines in Mariupol has appealed for international help to get his forces out of the besieged city. In a video message, Major Serhiy Volina said his forces could be facing their last days, if not hours.
We appeal to the world. It could be the last appeal of our lives. These could be our last days, if not hours. We appeal and plead to all world leaders to help us. We ask them to extract us from here and to take us to the territory of a third-party state.
Well, with access to Mariupol all but cut off, our correspondent Rebecca Ritters is following the latest developments from Kyiv. I asked her what she's hearing about the devastated port.
It's really coming down to the wire for that besieged city, as you just heard, Phil. That commander there pleading for their lives, saying that they really only have days, if not hours, left. We know that the Ukrainian soldiers are outnumbered at least 1 to 10, and the Russians have been bombarding that city for weeks. They are, of course, holed up in that Azov steel plant with a vast network of warehouses and underground tunnels. There's believed to be around about 1,000 civilians also taking shelter down there. But as you heard in that report, Russians now trying to use bunker-busting bombs to try and get underground to really be able to reach those soldiers remaining there underground. We do think that Mariupol will fall to the Russians in the coming hours and days, but really the Ukrainians will be hailed heroes regardless. They've done what they set out to do, and that's really hold up the Russian resources and soldiers from going elsewhere in this war. So definitely those soldiers looking to lose that city shortly, but will be hailed heroes nonetheless.
Right, and now the Russian offensive in Donbas seems to be well underway.
Yes, that picked up really that expected bombardment of the Donbas and of the eastern region really picked up yesterday. More than 1,200 targets hit by artillery and missile fire by the Russians. The Russians managed take their first town, Kreminna. They were able to take that from the Ukrainians, their first win in the eastern assault. But the Ukrainians also managed to retake a town that's very close to the city of Donetsk. So wins on both sides there. The Ukrainians say that this is a very decisive phase, this second phase of the war. So definitely picking up pace there, Phil.
And so how are people there in the capital reacting to these developments?
There's some frustration, you could say, from the capital about just how much support they're getting from the West. Again, President Zelensky in his nightly message calling for more weapons. He said if they had the weapons they needed, they could have already won this war. So, some frustration there that not more is being done to support them. Some planes, US planes and parts have started arriving from that $800 million aid package that was agreed last week, and more is on the way. It is believed that another aid package will be agreed to by the US. But frustration that other European countries, for example, haven't done more, that they're only starting to discuss, still having known for at least 2 weeks that this offensive was going to take place, but they're only discussing still maybe what they will send. So really some frustration there with Zelensky saying that they could have already won this and that it's a very decisive phase, not just for Ukraine, but for the rest of Europe as well. So feeling slightly alone in this battle, Phil.
OK, thank you for that. Rebecca Ritters in Kyiv. Well, let's get more on Russia's offensive in Ukraine's east from Frank Ledwich. He's a former military intelligence officer. He now lectures in military capabilities and strategy at the University of Portsmouth. Welcome to DW. What's your understanding of the progress Russia is making in this eastern assault?
Well, they've started what's called the artillery preparation and some initial probing attacks, such as Kreminna, which your correspondent mentioned, which is quite a small town, actually, which has been fought over for a number of years, or at least contested. They are not really set or ready for this operation. Something of this size would really take several months to set up. They've had a few weeks. There needs to be logistics, networks fully protected and secure and so forth. There are all kinds of things they should have done, haven't. It speaks actually of a lot of pressure on the Russians to get things done, and I think that's going to backfire on them. So to answer your question directly, it's raining now, it's warm, it's going to be a terrible day for the defenders, lots of people are going to get killed, but the Russians are in some trouble, I think, from the perspective of preparation.
All right, so when we look at these two sides, they do appear mismatched. Is there any doubt that Russia will ultimately take Donbas?
Yes, I think there's plenty of doubt. This is going to be like any battle of this kind, of this nature, artillery and armour, ground war. It's a war or a battle of attrition, and the side which can sustain its logistics and supply will prevail in that battle, which is why President Zelensky, quite rightly, is so concerned about maintaining or increasing and then maintaining that stream of weaponry, particularly, as you said, heavy weaponry, which needs to get there to be able to essentially slug it out with the Russians there. We're talking artillery, armour, armoured personnel carriers, things like that, as well as maintaining their air defences. All
right. Going back to what your first answer there, you said that this if Russia has not prepared this assault properly, and you said that this speaks to pressure on Russian forces, and it certainly sounds like Russian military commanders being taken by surprise by their political leaders.
Yes, I think, well, strategically speaking, that's certainly the case. It's perhaps taken more by surprise by their appalling rout in the north and being forced to reallocate the axis of the main attack to the south. And you would expect, really, this preparation phase to have taken a couple of months, and we've had it in a couple of weeks. So the Russians are going to run into difficulties. They are going to face an enemy, however, which is very well prepared and has been preparing for a number of years for an attack like this. And, of course, an enemy that's demonstrated itself to be operationally and tactically far more efficient if they're given the weapons to complete their task, which at the moment is in the balance, that this issue of supply of weaponry.
And if Russia actually takes Donbas, a part of the Russian justification for this is denazification and to liberate people in the Russian native speakers from the so-called Nazis. What sort of welcome will they get once they're there, given that Ukrainian forces have been fighting Russian proxies to a standstill for years?
Yes, very interesting question, Phil. It's worth mentioning, I think, that Mariupol, which is now in flames and much of it in rubble, with many thousands of its citizens dead, was traditionally considered a very pro-Russian city. And many people, I would suspect, I don't know, but in Donbas will maybe looking at that and thinking, well, have we been backing the wrong side? But who knows? The issue is now in the hands of artillery crews, tank crews, and of course the excellent Ukrainian light infantry with their Western-supplied missiles.
Good talking
Perhaps,
to you.
though, we need. Yeah, thanks very much.
All right, thank you so much for that, former military officer Frank Ledwich.